Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new installment in our reviewed and ranked series. Today, we are looking at another heavy-hitting member of the cast, that being the Indestructible Man, Luke Cage. This is a very fun character that, to be frank, I feel is a little underutilized. But as you'll see, he has some reason why he should possibly be reconsidered for some team placement. So as we jump into today's breakdown, make sure to see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that real quick for daily variety content. And as always, if you find today's video helpful and or enjoyable, feel free to leave a like on the video. So Luke Cage has 5 different team building synergies that are available to him. And those are in the form of 2 defensive synergies with New Avengers and Defenders, 1 resilient synergies with The Crew, and 2 strength synergies with Heavy Hitters and Fantastic Four Reserve member. And those strength synergies are really the ones that shine a little bit more dominantly for Luke Cage, as he's very much in that heavy-hitting tank-type class of characters. And if you can access the additional strength modifiers for him, it will help improve not only his damage output, but also the damage output of the rest of your team. So transitioning over to look at the basic abilities in Luke Cage's kit, of course we start off with his basic attack combo. And this is a 3-hit series of strikes, which covers a decent amount of ground as he progresses forward with those different hits, and does fairly well in terms of doling out damage to the opponents he's dealing with. The grunt type characters will be stunned out of their retaliation animations, which is always a good thing to see with these characters. Luke Cage's heavy attack is a 2-hit chain strike, and you will need to hit that button twice in order to get both hits of it, which isn't the end of the world, as it does it fairly well. And as with previous abilities that we've seen, you can chain this on from the basic attack combo and cancel out of that 3rd hit to incorporate the 2 hits of the heavy attack, thus extending his overall combo to 4 hits instead of just the standard 3. And that will encourage a greater damage output, especially where that heavy attack has some increased range to it and allows you to, as a general rule, break through the stagger gauges of the mighty and boss type characters a little more easily. Luke Cage's jump does possess a mid-air somersault or double jump animation, which, as we've covered with multiple characters in the past, does make him kind of useful for different puzzle and other obstacles that you may want to be avoiding on the floor of the different terrains throughout the story quest. He has a falling aerial, which involves a large hitbox down on the ground and actually deals a decent amount of damage if executed optimally. The trouble with this is, like we've seen with most characters, is he does not have an ability that puts him airborne, and thus makes him a little less inclined to use his falling aerial attack, though if you do find an opportunity to use it, it is a very good coverage type move. Luke Cage's block and dodge animation includes him bracing his arms a little bit lower around his body rather than up around his face, and then he performs that somersault in the direction of influence when seeking to get away from the oncoming attacks from your opponents. So now let's transition over and talk a little bit about his signature ability attacks. The first ability he has is Old School Action, which involves a barrage or series of strikes, and this is an attack that you can continue to carry out by mashing down on the ability button, provided that you have the energy points to dole out to it. Whether you run out of the energy points or just decide to stop mashing that button, it will contain one final heavier hitbox, which provides a little more knockback than the series of strikes that precede it. This ability has the melee attack type, the barrage synergy trait, and has an A classification in damage output, which is really good for the grunt type areas and a little bit of some crowd control. Has a C classification in that energy point consumption, and a less than desirable D classification in the stagger output. And with all of Luke's signature abilities, they benefit from a reduced energy point cost, an increase to attack damage, an increase to stagger damage, and a reduced chance of being interrupted as the attack is ranked up. Luke's second ability is the Harlem Express. This involves the character lunging forward and unleashing a powerful punch. You can hold down this button to aim the direction of influence for the attack, and this is a quite powerful strike if you carry it out correctly and target it in a line of different opponents, especially if those opponents have that stagger gauge that needs to be depleted. This attack has the melee attack attribute, the charge synergy trait, and has a C classification to damage and energy point consumption, but an outstanding A classification to the stagger damage that is dealt. And anytime you use this ability within the confines of a team synergy attack, it will detonate immediately, and Luke will try to hone in on the best area of influence or wherever the opponents are most prevalent at the time. Luke's third ability is the Power Slam. This involves Luke slamming down into the ground with a double fist strike, or kind of clams his fists together before striking down into the ground. This has a shockwave type attribute and has a 360 degree area of influence around Luke, so it can be a nice little get off me tool for some additional crowd control if you tend to get overwhelmed with a couple of the grunt type enemies you're facing off against. As a trade-off for having a little bit more range around the character, it does have the C classification to the damage, energy point cost, and the stagger damage dealt, and possesses the melee attack type with the slam synergy trait. And Luke's final ability is the Chain Gang, which involves Luke grabbing or swinging his chain around his head. If the chain connects with a grunt type enemy, it will latch onto them, prompting Luke to swing them around an additional time before slamming that character into the ground. The chain will still deal damage to other enemies in the vicinity, but it deals an increased amount of damage to whoever gets latched on by the end of that chain. And of course, that final strike also deals damage to anyone in the area of impact. This attack has an A classification to the damage, a C classification in the energy point cost, as well as an A classification to the stagger damage dealt. So all things considered, though it does take a little bit longer to execute than some of his other attacks, it does deal a solid amount of damage as a whole. The attack possesses a melee attack attribute and a bash synergy trait. And last but not least, we have Luke's extreme attack. Now, this attack looks fairly similar to the Chain Gang. It does have a little bit of an extended reach and involves multiple swings around the head of that chain to deal massive amounts of damage in the area. It also contains a final hit with him slamming that chain down in the forward-facing direction of the character for some additional final damage. This attack takes just over 5 seconds to run its full course, so you should be able to get the maximum amount of damage into the boss-type characters you're trying to unleash this against, though it does a little bit better in terms of dealing damage to large groups of foes, rather than being focused on specifically the boss character due to the increased 360-degree range that it possesses. When you detonate this attack, Luke will start the extreme attack right where he is standing. He will not move, he will not adjust his angle or influence, and that's fine. You just do need to make sure that you are localized within the group of enemies you are seeking to take down when you unleash this attack. So now that we've had a chance to look at what Luke Cage has to offer, we need to determine where he belongs in this tier list. Now, despite the fact that his attack combos are relatively slow, he is a very powerful character, so he already belongs in the top half of our tier list, so I won't relegate him to the F, D, or C tiers. Now, the question is, where in this top section does he belong? Now, he does hit quite hard, but he does not hit quite as hard as Hulk, so I can't justify his position in the S tier of rankings, but I do feel that he does a lot better than a lot of the characters currently listed in B tier. So I am going to list Luke Cage in the A tier list of characters, and I actually will leave him at the tail end of this list of characters, at least for now. Maybe I'll transition him up a little bit higher, but the biggest reason why he belongs here is Ghost Rider has a lot more range capability and hits very hard within that range that he possesses. And Captain America and Daredevil have status conditions that allow them to further the damage output of their team members. So I do feel like he belongs in the A tier, just towards the back end of the group. But what do you think? Do you think that the placement of Luke Cage is fair and justified here? Do you think that he belongs somewhere else? Or if there's anything that I missed in regards to his character, be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and we'll be sure to see you next week for the follow-up installment with a very exciting character. Thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.